Good day buddies. In today's video, we will doing an update to the DIY cup formicarium. And to the 18 months old Camponotis colony living into it. And along the way, I will also answer some questions, and share some tips, on how I keep pet carpenter ant colonies healthy. Anyway, welcome back buddies. And for those new to the channel, you're also welcome to D-Colony. Before we start answering some chosen questions, let's do a quick recap first. We started the colony from a single mated queen, which is basically the best way to start a colony and earn experience through the process. We witnessed everything, from the first batch of broods to the first few workers, called the nanitics, the first meal, to the continuous growth, the first tiny outworld, up to their first ever ant farm. Anyway, the first question goes like this. How can I keep my 4 months old Camponotis colony appetite to the fullest to eat protein? They have more than 10 workers, and a decent amount of broods. But they are not eating protein that much, from the tropics like UD colony. Well, something related to this, is one of the most asked questions to me from less experienced keepers. From emails, Instagram, and YouTube comments as well. I've been trying to respond to every questions as much as I can, but sometimes I ran out of time. So sorry for the messages that haven't been responded buddies. Anyway, based on my years of experience on keeping carpenter ants, if you have this concern, a big chance is you're feeding frequently, and overfeeding your colony. What you need to do is find the right interval of each feeding. You can do it by checking the ants' gasters first, before offering a meal. If you see most of them have a bloated gaster, means they don't need to get fed yet. They will be eager to check the food this time, but will only consume a small amount. Or they might completely ignore it as well. Cause in species like Camponotis, they tend to consume and stock food on the worker called repletes, or the ant's living refrigerator. You can always postpone the feeding, especially if workers isn't active on foraging. Most carpenter ants are nocturnal, so most of them will be active at night, if they need something. You can check them every few days if they look hungry. This way you'll eventually find the right feeding schedule once the colony is growing stable. You should take note that aside from the queen, the only in need of protein is the larval stage brood. They might have a large amount of brood, but zero or only few larvas. At this rate, the stored food will be available for a longer period of time. This is pretty common on young and small ant colonies. Be patient buddies, your colony will only require a regular daily feeding once they mature, or have grown enough. Anyway, we move the colony on this ant farm cause feeding them on the small outworld has been a pain. And after living on this ant farm for 7 long months, they've grown a lot. We can also see that the nest isn't that clear and hygienic anymore. So I plan to add new nest cause I want them to fully occupy the setup. But since we made the DIY cup formicarium several months ago, I decided to move the colony on it instead, cause they also have the right size for the ant farm. The whole colony moved to the cup ant farm right away. They're 1 year old when the migration happens. They loved the nest, and does great on the setup. Right now they already outgrown the milk tea cup setup. And before we install an additional DIY cup ant farm, let's check the colony buddies, shall we? Look at that massive growth in just few months. We have lots of broods, and a batch of young worker ants over here. Because of the tight space inside, young workers reach the outworld sometime. Anyway, the next question sent to us is, what will happen to my carpenter ant colony if they live on a dirty ant farm with pile of their waste and dead ones? I have been trying to move them on a new nest, but they refused to move in 2 months now. The sad answer, buddy, is they will end up dying. That's what happens when a colony lives in a crowded, messy, and unhealthy living conditions for an extended period of time. On my early experience on some carpenter ant colony that refused to move will start dying in a few months, and a lot of workers' exoskeleton will not harden, and will stay light-colored until they die, cause of the unhealthy nest. Piles of dead ant will slowly raise until the colony is wiped out. So the future of your colony is in your hands, buddy. You should judge the situation early, and take proper measures. If they refused to move after using the heat and light method, you should force the move if really needed. Just open the nest, and tap them to the new ant farm's outworld. Anyway, let's start the addition of new ant farm. We will connect them using the ventilation hole at the back. This vent is crucial for a healthy nest, so we can't let it lost. So we're going to use a T-joint on connecting them. This way we will still maintain the amount of ventilation on both of the nest. We're also covering the new nest, so the ants would find it a suitable living condition. Anyway, another tip, buddies. Carpenter ants are dry-loving species, but they still needs some moisture on the nest. So don't be fond on hydrating the nest frequently. For example, this colony lives in a setup with a water tower, so I just maintain the water level at 50%, which I find they do best, as they are not going away on top of the mesh at that level. But if your colony was living on a nest, with a classic sponge hydration system like this one, which also has a wet area available, don't water it when the colony is staying away from the hydration port. They tend to position near the entrance if the nest is too humid. Cause even if it looks dry, the nest can still hold some moisture inside. So the best way to know when to water the nest of a dry-loving ant species is through the ant's behavior itself. When most of the broods and the queen stay near the hydration port, this means most parts are already dry enough. So it's a great time to hydrate the setup, but then again, don't water too much, as you don't want them sticking debris, or much more waste products, just to dry it out, cause that will start an unhealthy nest. Don't worry, buddies, you'll figure out when, and how much water is needed through experience. Especially if you're using DIY setups like mine. Anyway, the colony's garbage site is located here, which is so convenient. Cause I only need to vacuum it up at least once a week. I've been feeding them carbohydrates every other day on top of this water feeder. Since the outworld of this DIY ant farm is kinda small. Luckily we now have a second outworld, and I will now offer them food here. To also attract more workers to visit the latest addition to the setup. I hope my answers and some tips would be helpful in your ant keeping journey, buddies. Let me know in the comments if we should do more Q&A videos in the future. And this is it for the update of this 18-month-old colony. We'll see them again in the future for sure. I just hope you have learned something from this video, guys. Be a genie for the first time by granting my wish in tapping the like and share button. That would help a lot. This is D Colony, saying goodbye for now, but hoping to see you on my next videos.